Give them a shot to do what?
What's up? 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 I'm very excited about this. We got Mike Hughes with the Shy Kid, and of course, my guy Martin Soares. We are talking all things WNBA Draft. The draft was on Monday. I was there. It was electric. A lot happened. There's a lot to talk about. So let's get right into it.
Yo, the vibes are crazy. Why are those vibes so crazy? Oh my god, the saxophone and wow.
That's tough.
Martin, I just saw you on Tuesday, and Mike, we've been talking all week. But fellas, how we doing tonight, man? Get ready to talk some WNBA draft.
I'm doing okay, man. I'm doing okay. Appreciate you guys having me, man. It's great stuff over here.
Great stuff, man. Good to see my guy Mike getting ready to talk some draft stuff. I'm excited, man. I've been excited for this.
There's a lot to talk about, man. I mean, there's a lot of hype around the draft this year, obviously, with so much talent in the draft. Caitlin goes number 1. Cam and Rickea ends up in LA, which we'll talk about in just a second. Angel and Kamilla end up in Chicago, which I'll also talk about in a second. Some players dropped a little bit too low. Aces, I think, with the picks they had an exceptional draft with the players they got. There's so much to talk about, but before we get into all that, this is the most watched draft ever. Mike, I'll start with you. Was this the best draft ever?
I think that's yet to be seen. I think there's definitely levels to it, and there's so many levels to what these women were in the collegiate level. But we'll never know until we know. We got to see what goes on. 2013. That's a tall order. That's a very tall glass. You have Skylar Diggins-Smith. You have Brittany Griner, Elena Della Donta, the Chicago Sky. That was a great draft, and there's others in that draft as well that they're not to be named, but they're great at what they do. There's no small order here. So I think it's going to be interesting. I will say I think this is the deepest draft from all accounts. I mean, even for the Sky, we're going to talk about it later at 13, got someone who's deemed one of the best shooters in the country at 13 in the second round is crazy. What the Aces were able to do in the second and third round, getting great players as well. So I think it was the deepest, but when you talk about the big names, only time will tell.
You made great points. I feel like you said the two most important things. I feel like the only real answer is time will tell. I can't help but think back to the draft where my sister went number 2 overall, Cabby Pondexter, former Chicago Sky member, but she was drafted number 2 to Phoenix, right behind Simone Augustus at number 1, and both of them are certified legends. Cabby was a 2-time champion and finals MVP in her first 4 or 5 years in the league. Mm-hmm. So when you talk about, Mike, I like your points about the depth, because I think we're going to talk about some of the sleepers in the draft too. I think that we do have the potential, especially the way the game is now. I think we have the potential to see some, because there's so many good players coming from all over the place, right? Like we saw one of the top scorers in college in history, right? Deasia Fair go late and go into the second round. So I think the depth of talent is the right kind of point to make about this draft. Obviously the most popular, the most watched. So it's the most popular draft, but as far as the best, as far as producing the best quality players, that's still yet to be seen. We don't know who's going to come out as legends. I think there could be a lot of really good players in this draft. But in terms of legends and Hall of Fame, and some of the drafts that we've seen produce some of the actual legends in the game, that's going to be yet to be seen. But I think the potential is there to have maybe the deepest draft of just really good players that we've seen.
And I know you guys were there too. I mean, if watching it was tough for me because we're sitting at 3-7. Hey, let's wrap it up. I want to see what's going on. Like, without a doubt, the longest draft I've seen. I remember last year I covered it talking to Aliyah Boston. It just flew. The first round flew, but this felt like NFL style. You know, I see Holly more than I see everybody else. I see Kathy, and I'm like, man, just let's get to the picks. Let's get to the picks. But it's also great because we're expanding it. There's things to talk about. So I mean, you guys probably had a blast, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of hype.
There was a lot of excitement. I texted Martin when Angel got drafted. It was louder inside when Angel got drafted than when Caitlin got drafted. Like the electricity just in the hype surrounding the draft was amazing. Martin and I got to the venue at about 5:30 or so. We just kind of talked to fans outside for about 30 minutes before doors opened at 6. And we even stayed a little bit outside long that because I had a ticket. They weren't going to tell me I couldn't go in. It was really good. I don't know. I agree with you guys. I don't know if it's the best draft ever off the bat. You know what I mean? Because you have to actually see these players come out there and actually step foot in the court and actually perform. But from the depth standpoint, I don't want to, beat this drum over. But you think about some of those players that did go in the later rounds, right? We're talking about the Charisma Osbornes and the Celeste Taylors, the Deasia Fairs, Kate Martins, like a lot of really good players that were vital players and played very key roles. A lot of these girls played very key roles on teams who made deep runs in the tournament just a couple weeks ago, and they're going later in the rounds. This draft was, for sure, I would say the most anticipated draft. Couldn't get the words out there, just because obviously you have Caitlin Clark, you have Angel Reese, and the excitement there. It's only going to continue, right? Like all of these players. We posted a couple clips about just like my thoughts on the draft, and I had someone say, "Oh, like Angel Reese and Kamilla Cardoso might not even make the roster." I'm like, "Come on, like we're talking about Kamilla and Angel Reese, like they're gonna make the roster." And a lot of these players, I think the other thing too that kind of opens the door for them to have that greatness and have that longevity is a lot of these players were drafted by teams who are starting from scratch, right? Cam and Rickea are in LA, Kamilla and Angel are out there, in Chicago, right? Like Aaliyah Edwards. The Mystics aren't starting totally from scratch, but like there's a lot of question about the Mystics right now because EDD is taking a break from basketball, and that's still a young basketball team. Like you have a lot of young players who are being put in places where they are going to be able to grow with the franchise, develop with the franchise, and have long-term success with those franchises. Obviously, of course, Caitlin Clark in Indiana, right? So like that's the other thing too that I think as we look back on this draft 3, 5, 7, 10 years from now, we'll look back and say, this might just be the greatest draft of all time, just because a lot of these players are being put in a place where they can be the face of the franchise day one or the faces of the franchise day one and have and their success be synonymous with a franchise's success. And I think that's the part that's most critical, right? Like when we think about the Chicago Sky over the next 5 to 7 years, it's not just going to be the Chicago Sky. We're going to be thinking about the success of Angel Reese and Kamilla Cardoso, right? Same thing for the Sparks, same thing for the Fever, to a lesser degree, same thing for the Mystics. So I love all of it. Might not be the best right now, but it can definitely be up there, especially with the 2013 draft. I think the consensus is that the 2013 draft class is the greatest draft class of all time. When you look back on it, like this one could rival it in the next couple of years.
Yeah, sure. I could even say like if we're gonna be honest, because we're not gonna just speak on the 2013 class. I think this class could clear the 2013 class easily if everybody turns into who we believe they can be. I think there's more volume, there's more players. It's quantity over quality, and sometimes when the quality's great and you have the quantity to it, I mean, we're really looking at 3 big names right now in the 2013 class. I could name 5 or 6 right now that I think that could be franchise players in the 2024 class. So I definitely agree with you. Like, we'll see what happens. Caitlin Clark could go out there and, become the biggest bust in history of sports, but I doubt we're going to see that. You know what I mean? Like, we know what they're going to be. Now, the question is going to be, how does Angel translate? How do other players translate to the WNBA? The more physicality, the more defense you see, that'll be really interesting to see.
Yeah, and I do think like a lot of this draft class does kind of come down to Caitlin. I mean, the better Caitlin performs, the better this draft class will look. And to your point, Mike, any other players that, like, again, there's so many good players that can put on to make sure that this draft class is remembered. The draft I referenced with Cappy was 2006, by the way, and then 2 years later was the Candace Parker draft in 2008. Sure. But yeah, it's going to be interesting because I do think like what Caitlin does is going to come back to, because it's her individual success and team success, right? Because we're talking about like their success and their team success, but it's about like it's kind of like how soon can you get winning? How soon can you be in that playoff hunt and start to, you know, establish your legacy? But Marcus, you made a good point about a lot of these players are in positions where they are going to be cornerstones of these franchises for the next 5 to 7 years, and who they're paired with, which, you know, we're going to get into here in a little bit, I think is going to be a really interesting thing when you start to look at the landscape, especially with this draft in particular, as we know, was huge for big girls, for shaking things up on rosters with the few really good big girls that we saw come out in the first round.
And the last thing that I would say too, and this just kind of just adds on to that point of just how great this class can be, and this maybe to no fault of their own, this draft class could be synonymous, or not even could be, is likely going to be synonymous with a lot of changes that we will see in the I almost said WWE, in the WNBA that we've been clamoring for as fans for a long time, right? Better salary, better travel accommodations, right? Like a lot of those things that we're talking about, as far as like just the way that players are treated, things that, you know, players like Kelsey Plum and Candace Parker and, you know, the big names in the league have been talking about for a long time, right? Obviously, Caitlin Clark's rookie salary has been trending on Twitter the past couple of days. Now, I don't really like that that's what's happening, but this draft class, just because of how many eyes are on this draft class, because of how much talent is on this draft class, like a lot of those things are going to start to happen. It's also coinciding with, obviously, next year, the new team in the Bay is going to be coming in. Commissioner Kathy Engelbert says she wants to get to 16 by 2028, right? You're talking about like they're trying to get new TV deals, new CBA. Like there's a lot of things kind of coinciding just outside of this draft happening individually, that all of those things get together could just kind of make for a perfect storm for this draft class to end up being the best ever, just by heightened exposure and really setting new standards for what the WNBA can look like over the next 5 to 7 years as well. Martin, you alluded to it. There are a lot of interesting duos that we get to see now on the court, starting first off with Angel Reese and Kamilla Cardoso to the Chicago Sky. I'm going to toss it to a clip that Mike sent me from his show. we're just going to play it.
Oh, how you feeling, baby? Hey, what's the word? We're back like we never left. We are in there like swimwear. Stop playing with me. Hey, man.
Yo, Mike, you hit that note. I know. Yeah, I know you were there because you said we're back.
We're in there, man. Like we never left. Skytown, stand up, baby. You know, we were hype, man. We were hype. Exactly what we predicted, exactly what we thought was gonna go down. I had no doubt from day one. You know, I was even talking to Marcus about it. Like, man, it's Cardoso at 3. And anybody, you know, at the beginning,
you said it on our show. You came and left a comment on our show. You're like, man, give me Kamilla at 3, man.
Yeah, like you have to, because you know, and I think at the beginning you have questions about, you know, the beginning of March Madness. We're like, all right, maybe you get Rickea. Maybe Rickea Jackson's the better fit. My comp for her, we did a whole breakdown on my show about who could be who, you know, just doing comps of WNBA comparisons, because I think that's always a lot of fun. She is a spitting image of Kahleah Copper, so that would have been interesting. But when you look at Elizabeth Williams really being the only center on this team at age 30, there's especially after what happened during March Madness with Dawn Staley, with Aliyah Boston, with A'ja Wilson, the track record of that, and big women coming out of South Carolina. I mean, you can't pass that up. So I was ecstatic of where we were, and I always believed we were getting an Angel. I just didn't know if that was going to be at 8. So for Jeff Pagliocca to be able to move to 7, and we're going to be having him on the show soon, talking to him about everything that went down with that. I mean, big time players make big time plays. Shout out Jeff for making some moves.
I think one of the marks of a great GM is like things like that, right? Like that, being able to make that trade, because as soon as I saw the trade, I was like, okay, yeah, they're all in on Angel, right? Because even if Minnesota's still at 7, like I know that a lot of people mocked Alyssa Peely to Minnesota at 7, and I even said that I thought Alyssa Peely was going to go, but like then it's like then you get to it in real time, you're thinking like, without that trade, does Minnesota really take Alyssa Peely at 7? Like, do we know that for sure? Do you know what I mean? Like, so like even that trade in of itself, just to kind of move up that one spot, give up the little extra bit that they did just to secure that. Because again, we're talking about a team that's in an entire new era, right? James Wade is gone. You got Teresa Weatherspoon as your new coach. They sent off Kahleah Copper and was a shocking offseason trade. And so you want to come in and you want to maximize on those 2 picks. And they did that. Kamilla Cardoso and Angel Reese. We talked about on the show, Martin referenced it, your comment on the show, the text that you sent, just kind of talking about what we're looking at for the Sky. Like that was these two together, like they've been going back and forth as opponents for a while now, dating back to Angel Reese's time at Maryland, right? When they were both freshmen, but like I even said in the clip I posted on our page on Instagram, like this is the best offensive rebounding duo in the country, and they're on the same team. Like Kamilla said, nobody's getting rebounds on us, and people laugh, but like it's gonna be very difficult to get rebounds, defensive rebounds, anyway, on these two, like because they led the country together in offensive rebounds as a duo. Like that is what you need when you like that ferocity, that tenacity, that ferociousness, that aggression to attack the boards is what you need for a young team. Like, and they have other pieces, right? We had Chaz Franklin on our show about a month or so ago, and he was talking about Marina Mabry and Dana Evans and all the other complementary piece they have in Chicago. Like all of that together, like they got hoopers and they have toughness. And this is a team right now in Chicago that embodies all of the things that you would say embodied Teresa Weatherspoon as a player when she was playing in the WNBA. So I love this. I think this makes perfect sense.
Yeah, what
sure.
I think the biggest thing I love most about it, when you think about these two players in particular, they come from the three brands in women's college basketball, three of the biggest brands over the last couple of years: Iowa, South Carolina, LSU. Right, all three of them have been national champions in the last few years, right? All three of them have become those became the big three brands of women's college basketball, and they all had players, coming out in the first round. For them to pair a South Carolina and an LSU, if you know anything about women's basketball Twitter, you know that these fan bases have not been friendly over the last couple of years. So the fact that they have a chance, like there's the whole discourse about converting these college fans to the W, right? Yeah. To make this deliberate move, to have two of the biggest brands who were also like rivals pretty much, to pair Kamilla and Angel together and not even getting to I'm not even talking about the basketball yet, just the fan bases. Again, with that conversion, that's actually a cheat code that they put in by getting the two of them together. It's like, come on, LSU fans, Bayou Barbie fans, come on, South Carolina fans, Kamilla fans, let's team up. And then you guys can both root for the Chicago Sky going forward. We just handpicked for you your WNBA team going forward if you didn't have one already. Real quick, Mike, and I was going to bring this up at some point, but now it seems like the best time. Do you have a suggestion for Angel's new nickname? Because I heard, I don't know if she's going with Shy Barbie. I heard her say in a video, Shy Barbie. I don't know if that's posted yet.
Yeah, I mean, she kind of claimed that. I don't know who initially gave her that, but she's kind of rocking with it, Chi-Town Barbie. I'm not mad at it. I think it's dope.
Yeah, I think that's smart. You could keep it's
easy.
The location Barbie. Yeah, it's easy. Now Bayou Barbie was the hardest thing.
Bayou Barbie's hard. Yeah,
alliteration. Like it's hard to beat that.
Yeah, you're not clearing that, but it's a nice.
I guess you could go. I think that's simple. I think that's the right way to go.
I'm not mad.
I'm wondering if you had any ideas on that, because I'm like, being from Chicago people, I'm like, because I saw like Chief Reese being thrown around. I'm like, all right, let me get some insight on this.
No, like I'm not. And to be clear, I'm not one of those suburban cats. So the Chief Reese one, I'm not rocking with that at all. So it's just part of my neck of the woods where I'm from. So, but shout out Sosa. But it is what it is. It's not 2013 anymore. But I've heard the Twin Towers one, and I also like just and not to turn this into a whole different pot. Not a huge fan of that nickname, just because of like everything that comes with that and the history. But like I love the idea of the two bigs being there and kind of complimenting that. Just not my taste, but
Twin Towers thing is played out anyway.
Yeah, just it's cool, yeah, like back in the 90s, but then you like in retrospect you're kind of like, why? But like it's just one of those things for me where it's like, right now, the way I see it, the way I look at it, I don't care what your nickname is. Just go out there and ball, and we'll call you champ sometime real soon. And I think that's what's really exciting. I was just talking to Chaz the other day about it, man. And, we're still waiting to see, what's going to happen with Chaz. Maybe he's part of the Sky organization, maybe not. But we know he's going to be somewhere putting in work, whether that's Team USA or somewhere in the W with Kalia Copper and company. But, I'm excited. We got some of the smartest individuals on this team. I believe Elizabeth Williams has the highest IQ in the entire WNBA. So for her to be able to mentor a stretch four and a center like we have in Kamilla Cardoso. See, already making comps. Kamilla Cardoso, and you have Angel Reese with E there. I love that. I think that's going to be great. We got one of the best shooters in the country at number 13 in Maxwell. Really excited to see her pair up, and just like was talking to her earlier today when we had her on the show. You can check that out on Give Us a Shot Network. Kind of talking to her about Dana Evans and her new year, and Marina Mabry and their shooters. So, I mean, you have a team that complements each other so well. Elizabeth Harrison, Michelle, Brianna, Diamond DeShields is back. So you got a lot of dogs in here. Tamara Young, who's on the coaching staff with Teresa Witherspoon. You have player coaches. And I think, what you have right now is a great roster put together. Last year, all respect to everybody throughout the organization, but the second James left, there was an identity crisis. And I think the way Spoon kind of put this together was, in this, not to say she'd ever leave in action, but if Teaspoon missed the game, Tamara's got it. Everybody in the room can step up and be a leader. This is an alpha squad that they put together, and I'm really excited to see what happens. Now, none of it's going to matter to me until there's obviously a practice facility conversation we have to have down the season, down the line. Dwayne Wade's just kind of here, and he talked a lot of stuff. So put your money where your mouth is. I really don't care about anything else. So I still want the practice facility here, because that's why you lose out on players like Candace Parker re-signing. That's why you lose out on a Skylar Diggins-Smith or a NECA in free agency. So you got the pieces, you got the young dogs. But now you just got to give them a house to play in, because I'm tired of staring at the DePaul boys basketball banners in this arena.
Ooh, well said. Well said.
We can
went off.
We can move on to the next segment after that one. There's nothing really that we need to add on to that. Martin,
I just want to practice facility really quick, Marcus. I'm just, you mentioned earlier, and I kind of gave a look, like, we don't need a new fucking team. Like, we need practice facilities. We need, full year-round insurance and healthcare. Like, Kathy, do your job. That's all I gotta say. But it's crazy to me that we're adding a new team before everybody has a fucking practice facility.
Say that.
These are all great points, and that team was probably going to have a practice facility before.
Probably will. Probably, I bet my bottom dollar they do.
Yeah. Now they absolutely better.
Yeah. A couple weeks ago on the show, when Martin and I did our WNBA Draft preview, Martin made an interesting point about the Sparks and Rickea Jackson. So we're going to play that clip and then talk about the Sparks.
I feel like LA should look at maybe stealing Rickea at 2. With all their guards, I think they could use a strong wing player. The latest ESPN mock draft from Michelle Vopel, she's got LA taking Cameron Brink and Kamilla at 2 and 4. So going with 2 bigs. And I could see that happening. Why not maybe steal like a wing player? Again, I think they're so guard heavy. I don't really see like a core wing piece for them. And Rickea would really fit well in there. You could get a strong wing and then still get a strong big at 4. So I don't know how likely that is, but like for me at 2, I'm like, I noted, I'm like, man, what if they steal Rickea at 2? Another quick thing I forgot to mention about Kamilla. We had South Carolina women's coach, assistant coach, Jolette Law on the show this week. She said that Kamilla Cardoso was the fastest post player that she's ever coached. And I mean, if you know anything, if you've watched Kamilla at her size, one of the things that has to blow you away is how she moves up and down that court and runs her heart out. And that's, I mean, for anyone who knows about what makes great post players, running is one of the underrated things that makes a great post player, just simply running paint to paint, block to block, rim to rim. And she does that at a high level. And I look forward to seeing that aspect of, because we know Angel can push the ball. She's got speed as a somewhat dual forward hybrid post, but they can, that team should be getting up and down too.
They'll be probably one of they'll have probably, we'll take a look at the end of the season, and their offensive pace will be towards the top.
For sure. That was definitely something for the Sky too, that like I just felt like, shout out E, because like I said, she knows exactly where she's supposed to be. She's like a Dennis Rodman today at the center position, but physicality and just speed wise, the Sky definitely needed that fast break type offense, especially when you have Dana there. Just the sharpshooters that they have to bring in Angel and Cardoso. I'm really excited, but I like that. Listen, I'm a Lady Vols fan first and foremost, so I loved your take earlier on LSU and South Carolina absolutely hating each other, because I'll be on Twitter just kind of standing in between. I'm just like, damn. And then I say something and they're both like, shut up. And I'm like, all right. Yeah, GBO, go Big Orange. But yeah, no, like I dare you. I dare you to take Rickea at 2, because I would have took Cameron Brink immediately, and I would have never thought twice about it.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because everyone had the Sparks going with two bigs. Every mock had the Sparks going with, Kamilla, Cameron, or some form of like
Yeah.
two bigs. And then Chicago goes with Kamilla at 3. So then I'm like, well, yeah, you might as well go with Rickea at 4. That's the next best
Mm-hmm.
available player at 4. So I like the fact that they did get to go with, like I said in that clip, they get a top level wing player who many people consider the most complete all around player in the draft, along with Cameron Brink and all that she brings. So I like how they get to add that to their very guard heavy roster. Now, depth in the front court is going to be a challenge for them. So Cam Brink is going to have her work cut out for her,
For
but
sure.
they have some new pieces to work with. I think they're going to be competitive.
The thing for me about the Sparks, and I mentioned this in both of the clips I posted about Cameron Brink and Rickea Jackson today on our page, is that you have who I would say is undeniably the best defensive player in this year's draft with Cam Brink, right? And she, as Martin said, has her work cut out for her, but she has all of the things that she needs to potentially be like that next all-time great big in Sparks history, right? Like it was Lisa Leslie, then it was Candace, now it's Cam. But like the thing that sticks out for me with Rickea is just the versatility, right? And I said it today in the clip that I posted. Like she is the most complete player in the draft. She can play the 2, she can play the 3. She's 6'2", she's versatile. She can guard any position on the floor. She brings a level of tenacity on the glass that not many girls her size have. Right, she can hit any shot on the floor. She can hit off the bounce. She can fade away. She can hit the catch and shoot 3. She can hit the transition 3. Like there's not a shot in her arsenal she doesn't have. And as I said earlier today as well, she might just have the purest stroke in the game, like of this draft class. Like I don't know if there is a player in this draft class whose shot is just purer and more reliable than Rickea Jackson's. Like a couple weeks ago, Martin and I talked about how like one of the things that makes Paige Becker so special is she's looking for shots in places that most girls aren't looking for shots. What makes Rickea Jackson so special is there's not a shot on the floor that she can't hit, right? Like she's not, as demonstrative of a shot maker or a shot taker as like a Caitlin Clark, but it doesn't mean she can't hit threes at a high clip, right? She might not, make her living down low like a Kamilla Cardoso or Angel Reese, but it doesn't mean she's unafraid to take the ball on the block, back you down and hit a fade, right? And she's fluid. Her motion is just fluid. I was sitting on the train Tuesday coming back home, getting ready for that interview with Coach Law, and I was just looking at clips for Rickea Jackson. I knew to make this post, and I was just in awe for like the entire 15 minutes of film that I was watching because her motion is so fluid. And like I knew that she had that fluid motion, but I didn't know it was that fluid. Like her ability to get from one side of the paint to the other side of the paint almost at ease. It almost kind of reminds me of like the running joke when and it wasn't really a joke because it was really happening. Like when Chris Paul and the Suns were making their run to the finals against the Bucks a couple years ago, and every time down the stretch of the game, everyone knew that Chris Paul wanted to get to that right elbow and he was going to take a shot, and everybody knew it. And no matter what, he got there, he hit the shot. Like that's what it feels like watching Rickea Jackson play basketball. Like she has several spots on the floor, and when she needs to hit a shot, she's going to one of those spots, and there's nothing that you can do defensively to keep her from those spots. When you put that in a system that has guards, very guard heavy, specifically someone like Isaiah Cook and like all the others, again, another very young team, but like her ability to handle the ball, to play the pick and roll, both as the screener, as the ball handler, like it just adds a lot of versatility to a team that recently has been lacking versatility. So like the Cameron Brink pick, she's the second best player in the draft. Obviously, she's going number 2 overall. To get Rickea Jackson, I thought it's not a steal because she was being mocked in the top 4 all year long. But when you think about what the Sparks need and where they're going to be going in the next couple of years, like that is a great pick for Chicago to say, we'll take Cardoso, and then for for Rickea Jackson to be at 4. I thought that was an excellent pick. I don't know. I would have been confused if they picked anyone else, even if they picked Aliyah Edwards, who is a very similar player, a little bit bigger, but he is not as reliable of a 3-point shooter as Rickea Jackson is. And in today's game, especially with the way the game's going to continue to go with Caitlin Clark shooting threes from the parking lot, like you got to have someone that can hit the 3 reliably. Like the fit is just beautiful. I love it. I love it so much.
For sure. I like it a lot. I think it's really dope, to really bring them together. I think Rickea reminds me so much of a more athletic DeMar DeRozan. And I kind of made that comp about Kalia Copper earlier. I think she obviously is a better 3-point shooter than Kalia was coming out of Rutgers. But a big part of that is obviously timing. Everybody's shooting the 3 ball now coming into the league because that's the Curry effect. So to have that happen, she's a step ahead. She's already ahead of the curve, and I'm really excited to see what she's going to be able to do. And the fast break offense is going to be really important because, like you said, the backcourt just isn't great. It's not. I wouldn't say it's not good. I'm just saying it's not concrete. These are not the players that when you're coming to win a championship in LA, are they cemented in, locked in? Brink, I would say, is. Jackson is. Azurá Stevens, I think, is going to be a big part of this team as well in the post game. I'm really excited to see her. Shout out Z, champ. But I think it's going to be a lot of fun to really see what this team's going to be able to do. The big question, I think, for me is what happens a year or two from now. And not to kind of pivot the conversation, but I do believe Candace Parker at some point is going to head back to the LA Sparks for that final run. I have no intel on that. I haven't talked to CP in a few months. But I do believe that at the end of the day, she's going to want to go back to where it all started. And if you can have Brink and Jackson in year 2 or 3, and then you bring in a couple guards, bring back CP for one final run, I think you really start to have a conversation there about what that team could look like.
That's really interesting. I think that will come down to obviously, her health, of course, and then whatever happens with Vegas. I think she's, again, no intel from my end either, of course, but the fact that she is coming back for this for the 3-peat title with Vegas, that could be interesting. Like, does she see this as her last season? I don't think she hasn't said anything publicly, but how is she approaching that? And man, that scenario is really interesting. I will say about Rickea, legit 3-level scorer. And everything you said, Marcus, kind of wraps into that. It's the fact that she is right now a legitimate 3-level scorer. And to your Kalia Copper comp, Mike, you make a great point. She's already shooting the 3. She's got that 3-level scoring tag more than Kalia had coming out of Rutgers, for sure. Kalia has developed that, and now she's got it for sure. No question. She got that now.
On her head.
Yo, bro, different, but legit 3-level scorer right now as a rookie. And the combination of the versatility of Rickea and Cameron, to your point, Marcus, I love adding that to the roster because the Sparks roster is just so guard heavy, young, and guards that are good. I mean, look, Kia Nurse, Zia Cook still has to put things together, I think, but I think that she can and that she will. But it's really, Kia Nurse, Lexi Brown, like they have a ton of guards that really make up that team. So I've even said they need to define who their best player is. That's going to be a thing for them as well.
And I think that's really important. I'm a big believer in this. I coach high school ball. I say it all the time. Obviously, I'm a Bears fan, so we're always going through quarterback controversies. If you have 2, you have none, is how I really feel about it. And if you have a whole kitchen full of point guards that could be the starting point guard at the start of the year, and you are not that you can't have depth. Depth is key. Depth is important, especially when you look at what the Aces have been able to do. But if you're debating, well, Justin Fields or Tyson Bagent or Andy Dalton or Nick Foles or Josh McCown or Jay Cutler, like, bro, if it's a debate, then you have no answer. That's the problem. Next up is the real thing. So I think their guard spot right now, there's a lot of players that have a lot to prove. And throughout the season, this conversation could totally change because Dana Evans went from a bench role player on a championship caliber team to one of the best defensive guards in the league, great 3-point shooter, hitting half-court shots. Shout out Chaz Franklin for helping make that happen. And Dana for putting in the work, just got a Jordan deal sponsorship. So that's really dope. But, you look at it and you're like, in this current moment today, you look at that guard spot. Hey, we got a lot of guards. Okay, that's not always great. Like the Sky had one center, and it's because we know E is E, and we know the best ability is availability. She's gonna go out there and she's gonna pick the brain of everybody. She's Dennis Rodman out there. She knows exactly where she needs to be and how she needs to do it. Now, 2 years ago, a lot of different conversation about who are, Emma Mieseman was there, Lee was there, a bunch of other people, swapping in and out. So I definitely agree with you. I think you made a great point. Like, cool. You have a lot of bodies, but quantity, quality, 2 different things. So I'm excited to see which one takes that leap out of everybody in the group.
I'll keep my comments about you being a Bears fan to myself.
It's unfortunate. It's okay. Like it's unfortunate, but 6 days from now, we'll see what happens.
Now it all changes, right?
Yeah, things might change. That's if this doesn't. I'll say this right now. Give us a shot. Protect our queens today. If Caleb Williams doesn't work out, I'm gone. I can't do it anymore. I can't. I don't have another rookie quarterback in me in my 23 years of life. This is it.
You can come put the green and gold on. We'll welcome you to open
I would rather drown. I would rather drown.
The last thing I'll say about the Sparks before we go is that the Sparks, just by nature of the way that the WNBA does their picks, the Sparks they could potentially land another really good post player down low that Martin and I talked about on the show a couple weeks ago. Kiki Iriafen, if she declares for the draft next year, could be in LA next year, just because I think LA right now is projected to have the first pick. Obviously, the season has to be played and things have to be changed, obviously.
Isn't that crazy to you though, Marcus, really quick? Like how, like when you look at it for what it is, like you see these analysts make these comparisons. You have Cameron Brink and Rickea Jackson, and you think they're gonna have the first pick. Like
I don't think they're going.
No, not you. I'm saying, but like when we look at projections, you can tell
they're not going to have the first pick. They'll probably have to move some things around to slide up into the top 3.
It blows my mind. I'm like, come on, bro. Like I'm not saying playoff win. I'm just like,
They want the first pick in the draft, but they definitely have enough talent they have enough pieces on the roster, and they'll win a few enough games where they can be within striking distance of that to potentially, if they wanted to make a move for someone like Kiki, if she declared she could. And
they're going to have to get another big to pair with Cameron Brink. They're going to have to, if you look around the league right now, they're going to have to, and look at what Chicago just got 2 of them in the same draft. Look around the league. We know what Las Vegas has. You got to go against those bigs in Dallas, right? Aliyah is going to be in Washington with Shakira Austin. Right, you've got these bigs pairing up all over. You're going to have to either have 2 good bigs or really good depth in the front court to compete with some of the best in the league right now.
Yeah, I think everybody just got lucky that Elena Delle Donne didn't go to Vegas like she wanted to. So I think
that would have been ridiculous.
It would have been a problem.
I kept saying that would have been the only, like, I think it only would have worked if Candace didn't come back. Like
I think that was the idea. Yeah.
In the most, I mean, to be able to plug Elena with Candace would have just been insanity in itself. But I'm like, once I heard that, I'm like, okay, well, if Candace doesn't come back, maybe that might happen.
That'd be crazy.
Speaking of the defending champion Las Vegas Aces, it's not often that you look at a defending champion and they have a solid draft by any metrics in any sport. And you take a look at what the Aces did with pick 16, 18, 24, and 36. In order, they draft Deasia Fair, who should not have been available at 16. They take Kate Martin at 18. They grab Liz Kitley at 24. And then they round out the draft with Angela Jackson at 36. As an Aces fan, I texted Martin during the during the draft. The first round ended, and Deasia Fair was still on the board. And I texted Martin. I said, she better not be on the board at 16. She better not be on the board at 16. And then we turn around, and I wasn't even expecting the Kate Martin pick. Honestly, I'll be completely honest. So that was a nice surprise. And then I looked up, and we got to 20. I was like, no one's picked up Liz Kitley yet. Like, I know she's got the ACL, but like, no one's picked her up that either. And then lo and behold, 24 comes, and then Liz Kitley. And then after that, I left because I was in New York and I needed to get back to my hotel. But Martin, I'll start with you. Like, when you look at what the Aces did with their draft, how concerning is it that they were able to have such a good draft and be able to just add on to the depth that you and I have talked about so much of them just having so much depth in general, and they've only added on to that depth with this draft this year?
Yeah. It speaks to the depth of this draft, like we talked about. I think it's just really impressive, just the fact that they were able to land quality players that like we all know and are familiar with. Like, it's not like, I mean, let's also remember there are 12 roster spots. Like, if you look at the Aces roster, we still have to consider that girls have to make the roster. I would project that Deasia Fair will probably make the roster. Liz Kitley, I don't know what her injury situation is or how that will play into what she does. Like, so we can't assume that they are all going to be playing on the Aces or even playing minutes. But it's just it's impressive in itself that Liz Kitley was the ACC Player of the Year. Deasia Fair is one of the greatest scorers in college history, and Kate Martin played on a team that went to the national championship alongside Caitlin Clark. So 3 quality players that people are familiar with. The fact that was even possible for them to be able to draft at those spots, to me, was just that's just impressive in itself. And of course, they have great eyes. They're seeing quality players. They're going to get a chance to make those rosters. But those are all players that are quality players that could give you minutes right away, you know, if healthy and if they obviously make the team.
So as soon as I got home Tuesday night, I pulled up our roster. I was like, we got to make roster spots for these guys.
Yeah.
There's no we can't not have De'Asia Fair on the roster. We can't. One of the things that Martin and I talked about.
I think because like you look at the backup spot, she works for what they need. Like I think maybe Kate Martin could work as a Kelsey Plum backup. Maybe De'Asia Fair works as a Chelsea Gray backup. But like De'Asia Fair, I think has a little more assurance.
De'Asia Fair of the four, De'Asia Fair, I think no matter what happens, will have a spot. I think
I would agree. I would totally agree.
I think she's the shoe-in. But when I look at the roster, I look at the construction of the roster, I look at who's on the roster, who we drafted. Like there are players on this roster that are expendable. And it's okay that they're expendable because the truth is they are expendable. When you have someone like De'Asia Fair, who one of the things that was the talk of the town with LSU, right, is why would Haley Van Lith go to LSU to go learn how to be a point guard from Kim Mulkey? That doesn't make any good basketball sense.
I didn't hear the town talking about that enough. I just heard myself screaming that to the hill. But go ahead.
You talked a lot about it. You're right. You were doing all the talking in the town. You look at De'Asia Fair, who's an undersized guard. She's going to a team coached by Becky Hammond, who found a lot of success as an undersized guard. It makes perfect sense. And like you said, Martin, she gets to sit behind and learn from one of the best in the business, Kelsey Gray. It works out great. Right, you take a look at Kate Martin. She fits in perfectly as the backup to Kelsey Plum. Hopefully, she learns Kelsey Plum's good habits and not her bad ones, and it won't be so. She's gonna
have to score the ball if she's gonna be that backup.
You're right.
I mean, she showed she can do a little bit of that in the tournament, but if she be Kelsey Plum's backup, you got to pick up scoring habits.
You're gonna have to pick up those are the good habits I'm talking about. And then you have Liz Kitley, who I think, despite the injury, I think Liz Kitley should have a roster spot because Liz Kitley is she's one of the best players she was one of the best players in the country when she was healthy. She was outstanding when she was healthy. And again, when you talk about having depth, like when you look at right now, I know we have Asia, I know we have Kia Stokes, I know we just signed Megan Gustafson in the offseason, right? That's great. There's nothing wrong with having Liz Kitley in that front court depth as well. Not to mention Candace Parker's coming back with what she'll be doing healthy like that. Like there's a lot to love about this Aces roster. And the one thing that we looked at the end of last season with the Aces was, man, like so many people went down with injuries and they were still able to walk into Barclays in game 4 and get the win and win the championship. Now what you're doing right now with this draft and why I love this draft so much is you have selected 3, potentially 4. I'll group Angel Jackson in there. I don't know much about her, so I don't want to be disrespectful, but the 3 that I know of, you brought in 3 players who are talented, who again have been crucial parts of good basketball teams and good programs throughout the course of their collegiate career. De'Asia Fair, Martin, you mentioned it, one of the most prolific scorers in the history of college basketball, and she's on the board at 16, right? This is a basketball team that is obviously going for number 3, but these 3 players specifically, if they're actually able to make the roster, we're not just talking about going for 3 in a row and being the first to do that since the Houston Comets. We're talking about the Aces having long-term sustainable success over a period of time. You have to think about the fact that Chelsea Gray is a free agent next year, may or may not remain in Vegas, right? She's from the Bay. A lot of people think she could go and play for that team that's going to be in the Bay. That's a possibility.
Could go back to LA.
She could go back to LA. Mike, you alluded to it. Candace Parker may or may not stay in Vegas after this season. And so this draft isn't just about the depth that we know that the Aces are known for the past couple of seasons. It's also about having players who are capable, willing to learn, and then if those players that are on the spots ahead of them do leave for one reason or another, they can step up and fill those spots and still benefit to the Aces' goal, which is winning championships. That's what I love about this draft for the Aces the most is all 3 of these players. If specifically Kate Martin and De'Asia Fair, because Asia's not going anywhere for Liz as far as Liz is concerned, but if they leave, they can learn, they can pick up those good habits, and they can plug into the system and still be functional, and they can still provide quality minutes and quality production as the Aces look to continue to be competitive and remain at the top of the league. That's why I think this draft is was just so great for the Aces on Monday.
Yeah, I think it's solid. The only problem, the only pushback I have on it isn't even anything against Becky Hammond or the Aces, because I know they've been taking a lot of heat lately. So I will not do that to you, Marcus. But I will say this, the problem isn't the players. The problem is the league. So to only have 12 roster spots, I remember Kiana Traylor shooting the lights out the ball in the first Toronto game in the WNBA's history for the Chicago Sky last year in camp, and you're watching her dominate, shooting the lights out the ball, and she can't make the roster because we only have 12 spots and we're at that time trying to compete with James Wade. So it's unfortunate when you have a championship caliber roster such as the Aces, because you already have what you need and you already have the specific spots that have been filled. So when you have 3-4 of them coming out of this class, there's a good conversation that I would say 3 of them could not even make this roster, and maybe it comes down to 1. Now, shout out to Kate, because Edwardsville, Illinois, shout out to her. Averaging 8 points per game behind probably the greatest college basketball player in the history of college basketball in Caitlin Clark. So obviously a little deflated numbers there just because Caitlin has the ball a lot. But I completely agree with you. I think exactly who you guys mentioned is going to make the roster, and I think it's just that black and white. Like, unfortunately, we don't have 15 spots like in the NBA. So you can have 3 first-round picks and 2 of them don't even make the roster, and the other one is just a role player. So with this position right now that Becky Hammond's in, I think she understands what it takes to win. And unfortunately for a lot of these rookies, a lot of players that go in the second and especially in the third round, they're likely not going to be on a roster this year. And that's probably the saddest thing.
Yeah. I do think that Kate Martin can surprise people. What she showed me a little bit in the NCAA tournament, where she hit some big shots in that UConn game late in the game. And you make a great point, Mike, about, she was playing with Caitlin Clark all these years. And that's not to say she has some hidden talent, but just, again, in the moments that we saw, she battled. We the things that we know about her are what got her drafted.
Right. 8 points to
tough.
me could easily go to 12 to 14 without Caitlin Clark being there.
There you go. Absolutely. For sure. I think that's perfectly reasonable. So I think the fact that she battles, she competes, we saw that. She can, hit shots. She can be a shot maker a little bit off the bounce. Again, those shots late in the UConn game, I saw some things like, okay, there may be more there that we haven't seen or that hasn't been tapped into yet. So yeah, I think she can be, I think she could surprise people.
Yeah, even Marcus mentioned it too. Like, we talk about Haley, and everybody clowned Haley for, first of all, being 5'6", guarding not only the greatest college basketball player ever, but guarding someone who's 6 foot tall. So shout out Moki for just focusing on that Washington Post rather than focusing on who's guarding Caitlin Clark. But with that, 18 points per game, 20 points per game, going to LSU, now you're there and you see that decrease because of Flage, because of Angel and the system that they're running. So you could definitely see one of the more dynamic players in the league go to another organization and just have to take that back seat. So in Kate's case, I think it's only going to get better. I think it's only going to increase. Unfortunately, you have now the greatest WNBA player in Asia Wilson in front of you, and Kelsey Plum, one of the better shooters in the league. So she's going to have to fight for it, but I think, she's used to that. And I think that's why you bring in someone like Kate, because they understand that role.
Let's talk about steals, because it wouldn't be a draft if we didn't talk about steals. Mike, we talked about the depth of this draft class and how it separates it from others that we've seen to this point. If you had to name the steal of the night in the draft, what would that be?
Chicago Sky, easy money. It's easy money, Sniper Gang, easy. Like, there's no question about it. Like, Maxwell, what she's going to bring. And you want to know her full name, you want to know her full story, you can check out Give Us a Shot Network, because we talked to her earlier today. 13th overall, deemed the best shooter in the country, period. And we've had several WNBA players agree to this. Teresa Witherspoon, Jeff Pagliocca. I've watched her film at Gonzaga, at Utah. She's a dog. And for her to go 13, like you said, even the Aces, you're getting players you shouldn't. And I think that's just a complimentary to how deep this class is. To be named the best shooter in the country, to go in the second round, even if it's the first pick in the second round, I don't care. How did you end up in the second round? I don't know. So, and she stands 6 foot tall. She's not undersized. She's a guard, really physical, great teammate, glory to God type person. And I'm really excited to see what she's going to be able to bring. Not to be biased, but if you're deemed best shooter of the country and we just stole you after getting the Twin Towers, over with. Game.
Cleaned up nice. Or who's the steal of the draft?
My steal of the draft is going to be it's tough because I got a few girls that I saw dropped at the second, third round. I'm like, really? That's where Mackenzie Forbes, third round to the Sparks. But my big steal of the draft, and I've been standing on this for a while. I've always loved this girl's game. Ashley Owusu in the third round to the Dallas Wings. She started out at Maryland, transferred to Penn State. She's a big guard, one of the craftiest players that you'll see. If you know, you know. All you have to do is turn on the tape with this one. Big guard, just super crafty, can shoot it, great vision, point guard type. She played at Maryland with Angel Reese, with Diamond Miller. She was on that team with Mimi Collins, who we've had on the show. I was shocked to see, actually forgot that she was part of the draft selection. But when I saw her name third round to Dallas, and this is a girl who can play off of Rickea, who can play some point guard, who can make plays for them on or off the ball. Ashley Owusu, definitely look out for that name. I think that could be a huge steal in the draft. Someone you could see making some noise right away her rookie year.
For me, it was difficult because I was also like going back and forth on a bunch of different names, and I was also trying not to just let my Aces bias just run roughshod. I think.
All right, Marcus, I did it. You can do it.
I feel like every player that the Aces drafted was a steal, considering all things considered. But if I'm going to say my steal is Celeste Taylor to the Indiana Fever. One thing that I noticed about Celeste Taylor when I went back and just kind of, again, watched tape while I was coming back home is you look at what she does, the way that she plays basketball to me fits with Connecticut. She's a really good defender. She's good with the ball in her hands. She can distribute. And the one thing we always talk about with the Connecticut Sun is how they've always just been missing that really reliable, really elite guard play. And so for her to be available at 15, right? She's played up against Caitlin Clark numerous times over the course of her career, right? But you look at the Indiana Fever's construction. Now this is a truly two-way basketball team, right? Like you have, and we love this word on Product Wings, you have the gravity of Caitlin Clark, right? You have the two-way prowess of an Aliyah Boston, right? We know what Erica Wheeler brings to the table as a defender and as an offenser. And now you're bringing in someone like Celeste Taylor, who averaged 2.5 steals per game, was towards the top of the country in steals this season, this past season at Ohio State. Like you're adding that into that guard room. The Indiana Fever, the GM, who I've grown to love over the past couple of months, just because she's all in on Indiana basketball. And it's the best thing ever. Like this is a basketball team that top to bottom is obviously a team that we're going to watch because Caitlin's there, but it's also a team that like her main goal has been, we want to get back to championship playoff basketball in Indiana. And getting Celeste Taylor at 15 overall, I know it's again third pick in the second round, but that's a steal in my eyes because there are teams like the Dream could have used her in their backcourt, right? The Sun, obviously, like she could have been a first round talent. So to go 15 to the Fever with Caitlin Clark and all that they have going on in Indiana, that I think to me was the steal of the draft because she could have very easily been, I think, a first round talent if you were just going to draft her just off the defense alone and how active she is in the backfield or backcourt as a perimeter defender. She easily could have been a first round pick just off that alone. So she's my steal of the draft. I would say.
Indiana may have gotten another steal in the third round. Leilani Correa. That girl can score the ball, man. She can play. She can really play. I covered her in high school. She started at Florida and transferred to St. John's, I think it was, or was it St. John's and then Florida? It's one of the two. Yeah, it's one of the two. I think she ended up at Florida, I want to say, but that girl can score the ball, man. Another two-way player. When I saw her name the third round, Indiana, I'm like, yo, they're putting players in there. They're putting players around her
for sure. And why that's important, though, we could just say it. And this might be the last time I'm invited on Protect Our Queens for saying this, but it just doesn't get talked about enough. Caitlin Clark is a shit defender, and that's just what it is. At the WNBA level, I think there's going to be a lot of questions. And I think when you look at the stats, he's going to shoot the lights out the ball. That's cool. But when you look at the stat sheet and you look at the plus minus at the end of the night, how is Caitlin Clark's game going to translate in the W? I think it's going to take some time. This is a very defensive heavy league. Not not to say she can't handle it, but going in there right off the bat, it reminds me so much of a young Kelsey Plum. You know, you have all the records in college and you're shooting the lights out the ball, and that's great. But without Chelsea Gray, there's going to be a lot of questions come down the stretch of the game of what your assignment's going to be. So to bring in a second round talent like that to kind of pair her up, you know, down the stretch in the game, let Caitlin do what she does, and then we can lock down on defense right here. So I think it's a great complementary to what they were able to do over in Las Vegas. And they're kind of checking all cylinders. I mean, this was a team that I didn't think, respectfully, I mean, they earned it. I was there. I watched it in person, but you know, it wasn't a team that I thought was the worst team in the league. This was not the team that I thought was going to have the number 1 overall pick, especially with the current constructed roster. Aliyah Boston in year 2. You got a little, I'm not going to say Kobe Shaq, but I think Paul Gasol and Kobe, little duo there, and Aliyah Boston and Caitlin Clark. So I think, I'm not going to go Shaq now, but you know, it's not like we got BG over here, but definitely think they're going to do amazing things. And to bring defense into that, I think is the biggest question mark, because as much as I love the hype of Caitlin Clark, that was always my biggest question, is defensively in this league with
Who is
defense.
she guarding?
I mean, I mean,
who is she guard? You can't hide her as much.
exactly.
Here.
You know,
Can't hide
KP is
her
going
as
to come
much.
at you, you know, and all these Dana
Coming
Evans is
at
going to
you.
come at you. And these players are, and yeah, it's cool when you're going up against 5'6" shorties at Iowa State. No disrespect to Iowa State, but you know how I feel about Iowa State. Guard wise, it's just not going. Great centers. Shout out Crooks. But, you know, I think at the end of the day, you know, it's just going to come down to welcome to the league. And I think if you can, I call it an airbag. If, you know, there's going to be accidents, there's going to be mistakes, but do you have an airbag? Do you have somebody that's going to be able to peel off and trail you and make sure you're good? Not that she's a liability, but definitely one of those like, hey, let's just make sure we got a game plan for when it's 3 minutes and we're doing fast paced offense.
Yeah.
And the X factor for the Fever, and I think she's going to have an amazing season, and I'm going to make a clip about her, and we're going to put it up on the page in a little while here. NaLyssa Smith.
Ooh.
The season that she had last season was incredible, and she was great in AU. She was great in Athletes Unlimited last season. She was really good in Athletes Unlimited this season. Like NaLyssa Smith she was the most comfortable I'd ever seen her last season on a basketball court. Now you're bringing in Caitlin Clark again. You talk about gravity. We know that Aliyah Boston has gravity. You're bringing in all of this talent. Like NaLyssa Smith is going to be able to thrive under this new, and she could have, not even could have, I think she will have the best season of her career in Indiana. I think she's going to be one of my favorite players to watch. Super quickly before we go, I feel like we all are going to have the same answer here, but who won the draft? That's a really difficult thing to say, especially a couple days after. You usually don't get to do these things for a couple years when things really pan out. But if you had to say right now, the winner of the draft, who would that be?
It's Chicago, man. It's hard not to say. It's hard not to say Chicago. Like I guys, think about it. I cannot wait to see Angel and Kamilla battle against, you know, NECA and Ezzy in Seattle. Battle. I can't wait to see Angel go up against Asia Wilson, right? Like I can't wait to see some of these front court matchups, you know. And I think Chicago, that the fact that they are inheriting such a front court, like I talked about earlier with those fan bases, the LSU South Carolina thing, I can't get over that. And I also love it for Angel. I feel like Kamilla is almost, well, I feel like they're great for each other. Like Angel brings that dynamic again. She's more of a hybrid post, pushes the ball, a little more dynamic. Like they're going to help each other out so much with rebounding. It's not down to just one of them, right? Like I would even watch Angel at times this past year, and Anissa Morrow helped her out a lot on the glass, but Anissa Morrow's an undersized big. She's shorter than her. Angel has someone bigger than her now that's ready to get boards over her. So they're going to be competing with each other over boards. And just that, I mean, everyone's excited about the rebounding because it's like they're that great at it. So I just, it's hard not to say that they won because of just this elite, dynamic, really powerful front court that they just inherited in one draft. It's hard not to say them.
And before we go, I'll say what I'll say what I texted Martin the other day too. The one thing that I know for sure is going to happen, Coach Spoon, as soon as Kamilla walks into the facility for the first time, she's going to take a belt or something. She's going to strap Camilla's right hand behind her back. She's going to make Kamilla shoot the ball with her left hand. Because if that happens, and Martin and I have been going back and forth about Camilla's left hand for a couple weeks now. If Kamilla gets a left hand, this duo that we love and we're already salivating at the mouth, this duo just takes it to that next level, because we know that Angel's ambidextrous. We know that she can shoot with both hands. She can pass with both hands. She's a good defender. Same thing with Kamilla. If Kamilla gets
that's not her thing. Shooting is her thing. That's her
Shooting is her
individual
thing.
development thing.
We
But,
just left hand.
It took everything in me not to say anything to Coach Law. My God, it took everything in me not to say anything, because I'm not trying to criticize anybody, but I know what I see and what I don't see, and I ain't seen her take a left hand layup yet.
No, for sure. And especially her first 3-pointer ever comes in the playoffs this year. So, you look at that and you just kind of break it down. I don't have Chicago. As much as I would love to have Chicago there, going with the obvious answer, you go with the Indiana Fever. That is point blank period what it is. Now, in the short term, I think Chicago has a better season instantly because the backcourt solidified. Isabel Harrison and them dogs doing their work. You got Diamondback and you got Teaspoon and company. Just they're going to be great. But at the WNBA level, and I mean this with the utmost respect because I'm so excited for them to be there. We're going to be there on Media Day covering them at Wintrust Arena. I'm excited to see Angel, but I think the level of Angel's performance is going to drop severely in her first year in the WNBA, because I think it's a very different league. And, Angel isn't typically used to being that type of physicality, and she's not used to having to shoot the lights out the ball the way they do in the W. It's a lot smaller sample sizes than being the number one option, especially in a Teaspoon-led offense. I definitely would, if I had to compare her, I think she is a more athletic Stephanie Dolson. That's really where I'm at with Angel. And that's not to say that Angel can't be one of the biggest names in the league. I think she definitely can. She's already one of them. And shout out to her for building that brand. And Kamilla is kind of the same conversation where it's like, you're great running up and down the court at 6'7", but when Asia Wilson and Breanna Stewart and BG are going up at your neck, what are you going to look like when you don't have a left hand? And I think, it's going to be interesting to see how they develop. They're great pieces to build. And what I do believe from Jeff Pagliocca is he believes in building this roster. That was one of the biggest problems with James Wade, is he wasn't really into development. He was more into let's win right now. That's why you trade 3 first-round picks for Marina Mabry that had me slam my head in my car door for 3 days. But, and shout out Marina, but wow. But it was just one of those things. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But Caitlin, for what this means for not only the game, but for Indiana, who Indiana ain't been on nothing in forever.
They had 17,000 people watching a draft party at the arena just to watch her get drafted. The correct answer is Indiana. They did win the draft. I mean, they literally won the draft.
Yeah, I don't get it twisted. I appreciate you guys for, hyping up the Sky as much as you guys have been. I've been doing the same thing. Super excited for their development, but who won the draft? I mean, you just got the Michael Jordan of college basketball on your team, so I'd be crazy to say.
Good point, brother.
I'd be crazy. I just don't want to. I don't want to be screaming Sky to the moon, and then somehow, some way, Caitlin.
No,
think about the storyline here from across the pond to Indiana to Chicago. Aliyah Boston is about to go up against Kamilla. Angel's about to go up against Caitlin. And if Caitlin ends up winning that game, everyone's kind of just sitting there like, oh shit, it's what it comes down to. So I think everybody's in a great position right now. LA needs their flowers too, because Rickea and Cameron are cracked out of their mind. And shout out Marcus for somehow, some way, always finding a way to be better. Not a Becky Hammond fan, but definitely a Candace Parker fan.
This was exceptional. Thank you guys, all you guys that watched and commented and tuned in. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. Make sure that you guys tune into all future episodes of the Shy Kid podcast and the Protect Our Queens podcast, both presented by the Give Us a Shot Network right here on YouTube. You can follow each page individually on Instagram at Protect Our Queens _ at the Shy.Kid. And remember, if you don't like women's basketball, this is not the place for you. So for my guy Mike Hughes of the Shy Kid podcast, and for my dear brother in Christ, Martin Sories, my illustrious co-host on the Protect Our Queens podcast, this is Marcus talking women's basketball. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, you guys go enjoy yourself some basketball.